Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sero, the Happiness Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We're champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Lu Ngo, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today we will be discussing how, for many people, the lines between work and personal life often blur, leading to stress, burnout, and potentially even a diminished sense of well-being. For others, a lack of personal interests in work life drains their ambition and curiosity, leading to an unfulfilling 9 to 5. That's where work-life integration comes in, the seamless blending of professional and personal commitments that offers a more fulfilling and balanced life. So in this episode, we'll delve into what this looks like and how it works. To guide us through this is diversity practitioner and thought curator, Dr. Rònké A, an executive leader in diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and access. Dr. Rònké has over 2 decades of experience driving organizational change, strategic development, and capacity building, fostering inclusive environments and enhancing cultural competence. So we're extremely fortunate to have her on the show today. Welcome, Dr. Rònké.
Thank you.
It
I'm so
is
glad and happy to be here.
amazing. It is great to have you here. So, to introduce everyone to the topic just before we start, what would you say is the biggest misconception about work life integration?
Mm. Well, one recurring correction to work life integration I constantly have to make is that work life integration is about productivity and efficiency. That is about being a more productive worker or being more efficient at completing tasks. As I think about it and as I filter it through what the language that I like to use, which is through the lens of worth ethic, work life balance, work life integration, they're both fundamentally about optimizing your life so that you're working less, not more. And by the time you recognize the need to adopt a work life integration, you have been operating from a place of deficiency for such a long time, which is usually the case, and which is usually what leads to burnout. So that's one. Another misconception that has fundamentally shifted my foundational relationship with work and life is the idea that work life integration offers the solution to burnout. The limitations of work life balance model begot the shift to work life integration. However, the work life integration model also has its limitations, and it's important to recognize the limitations of work life integration. For example, work and life are still bifurcated, that is, binary concepts within work life integration solutions. And so still a tendency within that model to think of work as the centralizing organizing structure in your life and to manage your non work experiences in personal life using the same tools that you use to manage your workday more efficiently. And don't get me wrong, very much still believe in that the solution is to work less and not more. And I still believe that we need to find a way to optimize our lives. But what has changed for me is realizing that most individuals are not really operating by their unique rhythms, and that we still carry forward very outdated beliefs about work and self-worth. And so a lot of the work, a lot of the challenges is around how do we properly reject those inherited and traditional ideas about work so we can live more optimal lives.
Wow, that's super interesting. I think when you mentioned the unique rhythms that every individual has, it reminded me of those like quizzes that you take online that are like, what's your optimal time to wake up in the morning or to go to bed? And how much sleep do you need? So, yeah, that definitely interests me a lot. That was a fantastic introduction to our topic. So, before we get further into the details, we'd like to get to know you a little bit better. So, this is Have You Met Dr. Rònké? So, first of all, what do you enjoy doing in your spare time?
Mm. So I hesitate to use the word or to describe the work that I do as spare time because a lot of my
Mm,
journey has been about cultivating hyper awareness around the language that we use and the taxonomies it creates and the bifurcation between work and non work or work and free time. So
yeah.
instead, I tend to think about my time as either active thinking and engaging time where I'm contributing effort or labor, whether personally or professionally, and then times when I'm not actively exerting my energy in any way. So the reason why I like that model is because it allows me to decenter work or productivity as how I think about how I spend my time and to think about my personal time as an extension of the life that I have. So the language that I use is the language of engaged time versus restorative time. And so I'm going to describe what I do in my restorative time. And so during these times of restoration, I focus on practices like somatic healing, mindful reflection, reading, taking a gratitude walk, very intentional movements, journaling, creative writing, and jigsaw puzzles. I love, love, love jigsaw puzzles.
Mm. That's a really great answer. I think that it's a really smart way to think about time as engaged versus restorative. And I can definitely see myself applying that to my own life in the things that I do. Journaling, jigsaw puzzles, yeah, I totally agree with you. They're really cool. So, my next question for you is I mean, you mentioned reading. So, what books or
Mhm.
movies have you enjoyed recently?
Yes. So I've been drawn to books, movies, and generally ideas that tap into or expand aspects of my self-awareness. And so I'm currently on a worth ethic journey. So I'm always drawn to books and to reading materials that allow me to expand how I think about and how I develop my worth ethic. Currently, I'm reading Morrison's collection of writings entitled The Source of Self Regard. And I'm also working through Charles Duhigg's Super Communicators and Zana Keithley's This Is How You Find Your Way. So that's what's currently on my shelf.
That's amazing. Great recommendations for our audience as well if they want to dive into more after this podcast. So, speaking of podcasts, are you an avid podcast listener? Are you listening to any at the moment?
So I used to be an avid podcaster. I was even a podcast host in the nationcy of the podcasting franchise. But right now, I'm not currently listening to any podcasts. Before it went offline, I used to listen to LeVar Burton reads. So I used to enjoy just hearing those short stories and him performing those short stories. So I used to listen to that podcast avidly.
Mm. Is that more of like an audiobook thing, like going back to the reading?
It it is, but surprisingly, I don't listen to audiobooks. I like the hard physical books. So, but
Yeah.
that one, I think it's just his narrative style, his way of like
Mm.
telling stories, and also he shares a lot of speculative fiction, which is a genre that I enjoy. And so I like being introduced to new authors through his podcast. I like that they're self contained and they're short. So you're not listening to an 8 hour audiobook. So these
Yeah.
are usually 30 to 45-minute sessions. And it's like he builds this and paints this beautiful world. And so I really enjoy listening and re listening to his to his podcast.
Interesting. I think a lot of people enjoy podcasts, but also I totally understand what you mean about having a hard copy book. It's just there's something about it. I'm not really an audiobook
Yes.
girl myself. I prefer a hardcover as well. My next question for you is do you have a role model?
Mm. So, a role model for me in this chapter of my life and this part of my journey is Trisha Hersey. I don't know if you know her, but she is the founder of the NAP Ministry. And the NAP Ministry is this wonderful, beautiful framework who has a very clear and simple message. Rest is resistance. So, in all that I'm doing around work life integration and also being a worth ethic advocate, it's the thing that I'm constantly challenging people to do and working professionals to do is to embrace rest. And so this idea, so that it is incorporated and is the bedrock of the ministry is really empowering and inspiring for me. And it's just the way in which her message just highlights the transformative power of rest as a radical tool for community healing and social justice. So I'm drawn to that, to her and her work. I'm also inspired by everyday role models. So I don't really subscribe to this whole role model. I think that I find inspiration by seeing other people live their truth and give us different ways or different models as way to like live authentically. So I'm inspired by those who set boundaries, those who take lunch breaks, those who carve time out for themselves, those who advocate for what they need and deserve. And so I look to these individuals to kind of help me along my journey and to inspire me along the way. So I love these both bold and quiet acts of resistance.
That's fascinating. I've definitely seen on social media something about that rest as resistance. It sounds like something I've come across when we sort of talk about like hustle culture and how, it's yeah, it's not necessary and you can rest is actually going to help you perform better in the long term. That kind of messaging, I've definitely seen that around. So that is very interesting to me. And finally, is there a course or a class that you've taken that has inspired you?
Yes. So currently, what is inspiring me is the somatic healing courses that I'm taking along my way to becoming a somatic healer and getting a certification in somatic healing. I'm taking it through the my vinyasa practice. And so that course has been very inspiring. Has completely started to radically change just how I think about movement, how I think about healing practices, how I even think about rest. And I love that I'm able to pair that course with books like The Body Keeps the Score or Black Fatigue or My
Mm.
Grandmother's Hands. And so the way in which I'm, expanding the lessons that I am getting through the course. It's really helping me to understand the connection between the body, the mind, and well-being in a way that really expands this my platform or my message in terms of developing your worth ethic.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. We're now going to dive into our topic a bit more deeply. But first of all, let's get some of the basics down. So, what does happiness mean to you?
Yes. That is a beautiful and bold and big question.
Isn't
So I
it?
think we have it really is.
Yeah.
And it's so full. And so in order for me to understand or kind of work through what happiness means, I think it's important for you to understand that for me everything is connected. Everything is interrelated. Every question is fundamentally a question about relationships and being aware of the relationship dynamics at play in every interaction. So
Hmm.
when I think about happiness, happiness to me, extends this notion of interconnectedness, and it encapsulates this relationship that someone has with their external surroundings, with the external world. Happiness to me is about how I feel about and with and in relationship with the things that surround me. Happiness is the metric I use to measure my contentment with the world. And so when I'm thinking about happiness and the moments in which I'm dissatisfied or lack happiness or unhappy, it is to me an indication that there's some level of dissatisfaction with the object relationship that surrounds me. And those moments where I have a great sense of happiness, it's that when I'm content with the object relationship around me, or I feel fulfillment in the with the relationships around me. So I tend to think about happiness along those terms. And so for me, my definition of happiness is about being in relationship with the world and finding contentment in this relationship. And to finding spaces where I am nurtured and where I feel connected and I feel fulfillment and I feel loved and I feel accepted. And so that's what happiness means to me. It's just about being present with the world around you and with the things that are surrounding you and feeling content with those types of relationships that you have built in the world.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And following on from that, what are some misconceptions that you think people have about happiness?
Mm. Well, given the unique way that I think about happiness, and the most significant misconception I think that people have about happiness is that it is fundamentally about stuff, or as I'm
Mm,
talking about external objects. For me, happiness isn't exclusively tied to stuff, or it's not directly tied to external achievements or to possessions or to like getting a promotion or acquiring material things or achieving certain statuses. People often believe that happiness is also a destination to be reached once their goals are accomplished. However, the way that I think
mm,
about happiness, it's not just about your external circumstances. It's how you feel fundamentally about and in relationship to those circumstances. So your entire world could be crumbling around you, but you could have a good relationship with, your family, or you could love the job that you're in. And so even within that, you can find happiness. And so I think that people think that it's just about accumulation of stuff. No, it's about surrounding yourself with the stuff that is meaningful and that matters to you most. And so I think that is one of the popular misconceptions or the nuances that I find when people talk about happiness.
yeah. No, I definitely agree. That's such a fantastic answer. So, another sort of definition question for you so that we can really dive into this topic. What would you say are the core differences between work life integration and work life balance?
So, work life balance is a model that teaches us how to really compartmentalize our work and our life. So, we
Mm,
have buckets of time where we spend to work and they don't bleed over into life. So, creating a balance where you are both achieving and excelling at work, yet also achieving in your personal and in your personal life. Work life integration, works to kind of shift that and to say that it's really not about creating a balance, because that balance is hard to maintain. Sometimes, you have a work emergency that creeps into your life, or into your personal or your family time. You have a life event that creeps into your work life, and so you have to take off time from work. And so those boundaries between work and life are not so clear as work life
mm,
balance tries to maintain. So, work life integration says that the goal isn't to create a balance, because that just isn't realistic, but to understand that this flow from work to life, that work does, tend to bleed into life, and life does tend to bleed into work. So, how do we create the system where we can move and flow effortlessly and seamlessly? How can we make time for our life within spaces of work? How can we find spaces where we are feeling productive in our work when we're at home without the guilt and the shame and the frustration that we feel when we're not able to excel in both?
mm.
So this integrated view, which is the work life integration, helps us to shed this myth of separation that balance creates, in order to create a more better, more balanced, more flexible, seamless life of flow, as we move from work to life.
That's fascinating. That makes a lot of sense as well. And so, what would you say are the key benefits of achieving work life integration that are less apparent in work life balance?
So, according to the definition that I just provided, it seems
Mm,
as though work life balance is primarily about compartmentalization, about creating boundaries. And work life integration focuses again more on this flow between work and life. The
mhm,
advantages of work life integration is that it feels more flexible. You're able to better, able to create more opportunities for and more space for life, when you're engaging in work. For example, for those who work remotely, they're able to carve out space where they can both get their work done and also feel present in their home life. So work life integration really creates this kind of flexibility that also creates this aspect of boosting your own productivity. You feel more productive, more efficient because you're able to better manage your work and life in ways that creating these severe demarcations and saying, okay, well, I'm going to stop at 5 p.m. According to work life balance, I'm going to stop at this particular time. But what if you have a project that you feel guilt and you feel shame? So work life integration, allows you to better coordinate these efforts in a way that work life balance does not. Also, but one of the disadvantages of the work life integration model is that it creates blurred lines. So when you're at home, because your work and life are always integrated, it seems like you never stop working. You're always working because you take work home with
Mm.
you. You have created space for you to complete that and perform that work at home. So it spills over into your personal time. And so even at work, you made a space for you to take personal calls, to rush out from work to pick up a child, or you to take or to attend a doctor's meetings. And so in that, you don't have the ability to truly switch off. With the work life integration, you're still in both scenarios experiencing this overworking. And so I
Mm.
prefer this idea of developing a worth life that allows for a more seamless flow. So that's the case. The other thing I want to mention is that work life integration may or may not work for everyone. That is one of the other kind of limitations of the work life integration model. On my website, I created a test called the Worth Alignment Assessment. And this assessment encourages reflection on how you navigate the pressures of productivity, how you balance your responsibilities, and how you honor your intrinsic value. And the purpose is to help you explore whether work drives you, whether your focus is on your life and that shapes your integration, or whether worth drives your choices. And the results of this assessment will tell you very clearly if you are work centered, life centered, or worth centered. And the reason why I
Mm.
mention this assessment is because the worth ethic journey that I'm on aims to eliminate the shame, the guilt, the frustrations that are often associated with work. And the goal is not to make anyone feel ashamed for being achievement driven if they are work centered, which is usually the case within the work life integration model and even the work life balance. There's a lot of shame for being achievement driven and not having time for personal life, and sometimes people report that they make you feel bad for prioritizing your family in the cases that you find out that you're a worth-centered individual. But the key and the goal, I think, with all of these models, and they more or less do it better, or better than previous models, is to really embrace that aspect in a healthy way. And why is this important? So, my research into work life integration, into work identity, has found that those who are work centered tend to gravitate toward more work life balance. They seek out work life balance and the compartmentalization that work life balance offers. And
Mm.
those who are life centered tend to embrace work life integration. And so those two models have a purpose depending on your own working theory of self, depending on what your natural and unique rhythms are. You will gravitate more or find that one works better than the other. But the important thing and the goal of what I'm presenting and what I like to call the worth ethic framework is that the goal here is to displace work as the core feature of your theory of self. So even within both of these models, they still center work. And I think that is the primary thing that leads to burnout. So we
Mm.
have to decenter work from our as a primary core feature of this theory of self, so that we're able to rewrite our stories in a way that nurtures our own needs. And so that will lead eventually to less burnout, to more integration, to more balance, to more alignment, is what is the language that I like to use. Alignment in our life, as it pertains to work, personal life, family, and also our own achievements. So I think that, so for me, that's how I like to kind of think about and frame work life integration, balance, and the worth ethic framework.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. So, let me reframe my next question a little bit for you in that case, because I'd like to dive into your worth ethic framework a bit more. So, in what ways do you think work life integration can contribute to overall happiness? I suppose, in contrast to work life balance, but then also, given what you've said to us about worth ethic, um, how does worth ethic contribute to overall happiness in contrast to the other two?
Yes. So, one of the primary features of work-life integration that makes it a more superior model than the work-life balance is this integrative relationship that it creates. I think when we see work-life integration in practice, we find that people are able to ask for what they need more. For example, a lot of people, when they have doctor's appointments, they try to schedule their doctor's appointments around the work, meaning that and oftentimes they didn't have time to attend, critical health appointments. And then you can see that that affects their health, meaning that their health was put into the back burner. And so we see a lot of both mental and physical and emotional health problems with this inability to rather to prioritize your health and your own self-care, and to coordinate it with your work schedule. So the work-life integration model allows us to opens up a space for us to think through what we need in terms of how do we care for ourselves? How do we make time and space for self care? How do we make time for the things that matter to us more than work does, right? Because work life integration opens up this framework, or opens up this lens where we start to think that we are more than what we do. We're more than just the hours that we work, that our personal life is needs to be as enriching as our work life. And so the work life integration models opens up that ability for us to kind of think about how do I start to become more fulfilled in my work life as well as my personal life. The worth ethic framework takes it a bit further and says that, again, the problem with both of these models, the problem with this is that work is still the center. We're trying to carve out space for our life, and even in our personal life, we're working. There's no time off. We're not prioritizing self care. We move from our 9 to 5 and then do another 5 to 9 when we get home, because there's so much that we want to do. We have these extensive to do lists, and we want to check everything off in order to feel like we've accomplished or to be fulfilled. The worth life framework says that that is fundamentally the wrong way to approach and to think about our lives. We are more than the work that we do. We're more than a system of outputs. We're more than a measure of our productivity. So let's connect fundamentally to who we are and think about what is our and think and ask ourselves fundamental questions about what do we need in life? How do we foresee ourselves living? What is your unique rhythm? You mentioned at the beginning these personality tests that say, are you a morning person? Are you an evening person? Those things are critical to understand how you should schedule your day. When we are thinking about productivity, the under the work life balance and integration models, productivity is still achievement bound, it's still achievement driven. The worth ethic framework says that no, to be fully productive, you have to align your energy. You have to really think about, when are you the most awake and alert? When do you have the most energy? What types of tasks bring you the most fulfillment, bring you the most excitement. And maybe let's start shifting our lives toward those things that are really and truly fulfilling and enriching to us. So the worth ethic framework takes it a bit further and decenters work and says, you are valuable. You have inherent value. What you do matters, but your life isn't reflective of how much you value your own self worth. And so the worth ethic framework really helps us to kind of challenge those inherent beliefs that we have around work and to move to a model where we create alignment, not by bifurcating and separating work and life, but by really centering ourselves and say, what can flow through my life? So in one, and I'll share this. One of the things, and really true testaments to the impact of the worth life framework, and eventually to the goal of creating worth life abundance is this individual. I was working with a client, and they were saying, and let me pause there. Let me take a step
All
back.
good.
Okay, because I can now. Okay, um, I forgot this story.
That's
Oh
okay.
God,
If
yeah.
you want, we can
So
come back
anyway,
to it.
yes. So anyway, yes. So yes, the worth ethic framework is this revolutionary uh, uh, model.
Mm, definitely. No, I totally agree. And everything that you've said seems like it would be applicable to my life personally. And I hope that we can get in a little bit later. I've got some more questions about how we can actually apply this and what
Yeah.
employers can do as well. So we'll get into that. But first of all, I wanted to ask you, what are the common challenges that people face in attempting to achieve work life integration?
Yes. I have said time and time again that the primary and most common challenge that arises in attempting to achieve work life integration is has to be the priority of work and centering work as a primary organizing structure. I think that it's hard to think about what the fullness of your life, or hard to imagine a quality of life that's different from from your present circumstance if you have job insecurity,
Mm,
if you are experiencing workplace microaggressions, if you don't feel fulfilled in your career. It's really hard for you to think about, or to allow space for you to think about personal life if your work life isn't it doesn't enrich you and fulfill you. Simultaneously, it's hard to think about your life if you don't even make space for your for if your work. It's hard to think about your life if your work doesn't allow space for you to pursue and to live an abundant life. So I think that us centering work is a common challenge, is a relatable
mm.
challenge in achieving the work life integration.
Definitely. No, that makes sense. So decentering work is the difficult thing that people need to kind of get over as a bit of a hurdle to understanding how they can better integrate work and life. That makes sense to
Can
me.
I can I add another thing
Of
along that,
course.
because it is about decentering work, but it's also about recognizing how much we work and
Mm,
what constitutes as work. So a lot of times people do not think about the amount of energy that they utilize when they are at home, or when they are, for example, cleaning their house. So they don't think about that alongside the type of energy, the energy drain, and the type of work that they do in their 9 to 5. So when I start talking them through the overwork in their own personal life, they finally realize that actually my entire day is filled with different types of work. So
Mm,
so a lot of the advice, a lot of the coaching that I do is around how can we how can we uncouple ourselves from work, and how can we institute and have moments of restorative time? How do we incorporate more self-care? How do we replenish those that energy? Is there enough time that you're spending in your non-work hours doing these restorative practices? So I think that that's one of the that those are common challenges. One, decentering work, but also realizing the prevalence of overwork.
yeah, that definitely makes sense. And overwork, even in the home, is a very interesting concept. I think people probably don't think about that often. So, moving on to my next question, which is sometimes people talk about the hybrid model, which used to seem daunting, but since COVID-19, 62% of US companies now offer this model. So, what opportunities are there now that perhaps weren't there before for improving work life integration in today's workplace?
Yes. So one of the ideas that's usually attached to work life integration, especially as it pertains to the workplace, is this idea of flex work.
Mhm.
And flexible working environments, creating a flexible workspace, is one of the primary goals of work life integration because you need that flexible space in order to make more room for your non-work hours or your non-work tasks, your
Mm,
personal life. And we know that flex is defined as the ability to expand and to contract easily, and that represents how people want the ability to work less, to so that they can make time for this integration of personal life, of self care, of relaxation, of rest, of restorative moments. However, employers still have this expectation, even on the other side of COVID-19, of the pandemic, where they want their employees to work harder. And there's still this expectation that even if you're working at home, you're still working. And there's still all these metrics and these rubrics of surveillance to make sure that you are working, even if you're not at
mm,
work. One of the kind of primary examples that I often think about is snow days. So in the United States, and I imagine that it's the same there. Whenever there was, icy roads, or whenever there were, weather conditions that prevented people from coming to work, they were able to take snow days,
mm,
time off. That would, they had a paid time off because of the snow. Now, because of the pandemic and the ability for and the practice that employers and companies had with remote work, there's this ability to continue that work, and therefore continue this expectation to continue that work at home, even when the weather conditions aren't compatible with
mm,
working. So even though you still have the same responsibilities, for example, you still have to, clear you still have to clear your driveways. You still have to, make all of these alterations to your day and your schedule. The work doesn't stop. So what that signals to me is that that even that the benefits of remote work have ha- what that has signaled to me is that even although there are benefits to remote work, it still does not prevent this expectation to work hard or to overwork. So it makes this idea of a work life integration much more strenuous, because we do find in remote work this integration, this clear integration of work life. You are working from home, so there's that blurred lines, there are those blurred lines between your at home and work life. So we see that very prevalently in the remote work life and in the remote work. The
mm,
other thing that I would have to say is that post pandemic, And it is becoming more of a trend nowadays. This idea that organizations and companies are requiring their employees to return to work, right? And so those types of policies signal to me is how quickly the ethos of flexibility has shifted back to in person. This proximity bias, this in person preference. And so what that amounts to, or the implications of that, is that we're seeing that it's going to be more and more difficult for employees to articulate their need for more integration, for work life balance or integration model, because of these shifts, these post pandemic shifts. And so the onus really falls on the employer, on the corporations, on the companies to extend and to expand these options for work life integration, and to offer some more relaxed policies that will allow their employees to continue to the same benefits that they had during and through the pandemic in this post-pandemic reality and workplace. Um, the last thing that I'll say is that one of the key benefits of remote work was that it provided this idea of freedom. And work life integration often gets talked about as offering this promise of greater and more freedom. But the cost of more freedom comes is something that companies tend to pass on to their employees, and we see this most clearly in the case of gig workers. So more than 36% of the American population has a gig work arrangement. And what that shows me is that they're still trying to create this idea, to create this reality where they are both supported financially and also have the freedom to work the schedule that they want. So I think that employers need to understand the impact that non-flex work arrangements are having, and to understand that what employees want is more flexibility.
So, now that we've started talking a bit more about employers and companies, what can organizations do that creates a culture that supports work life integration?
I think that the easiest way to create a culture that supports work life integration is to actually adopt the language of work life
Mm.
integration. I think that even updating their policies to include work life integration would be great. That's low hanging fruit in my mind.
Mm.
I also think that reevaluating and reprioritizing the workload to make sure that there is space for those to help to balance their work and life. I think adopt also, I mentioned earlier, just adopting a more hybrid work schedule would also help to create a culture that supports work life integration. And I also think, especially for leaders, modeling work life integration. I think that one of the biggest things that I remember in the corporate spaces that I work is this mandate of turning on your cameras during
Mm.
meetings. I think that cameras should be optional. I think that allows, or that indicates, a certain level of trust in your people to get the work done, and to also to attend to more personal things, personal matters. So things like that. I think that when we talk about work life integration, most employers hear this kind of large scale overhaul of their practices. I think that if you ask employees what work life integration looks like to them, that they'll tell you very explicitly what the culture, what they
Mm.
need, what it means, and how to create this for them. So just having those conversations and being open to having those conversations with their employers would go a long way to developing and building and supporting work life integration.
Okay, so you mentioned policies there. What types of policies or practices would help to encourage this structure in companies?
I think that there are a couple of policies and practices that would really help. One of the more controversial policies is the 4 day work week. I think that that would allow individuals to be able to take care of out of non work responsibilities. I think that one of the things that I hear most frequently is it's the people's inability to get to doctor's appointments, to make it to the bank on time, to run errands before they have to pick up their children. So I think allowing more flexibility around their time would really go a long way to encouraging more work life integration. I also think removing some of the more stringent policies around surveillance in terms of I've already mentioned turning your Zoom camera on, but I think
Mm,
that what more people are looking for, in terms of making more being more receptive to work life balance is around just the creation or the power to um, so what I've been hearing is more so around this idea of being able to control their calendars, what gets scheduled when. I think as I talked about it, it's important for individuals to be able to work according to their energy levels. So if you're
mm,
regularly putting, 9 a.m., 8 a.m. Meetings on their calendars when their energy levels are highest around 10, 11, then you're not getting the best the best work out of your employees. They're not actually producing things that are actually beneficial. I think that just some recognition of the energy alignment with their workday would go a long way. I also think
mm,
that people like making it normal practice to take breaks. I think that having rest times, having break times throughout the day would, even for those who work remotely, would also signal this idea of this recognition of work life integration, that people need breaks, people need downtime in order for them to be their most effective when they do show up in
mm.
meetings, at work, in projects, on things like that. So I think those policies and practices would be helpful.
So, on the employer's end, then, what would you tell them are the advantages of encouraging a work life integration arrangement?
So work life integration has several benefits to employers.
Mm,
First and foremost is the improvement of the quality of work. I think that
mm,
work life integration allows employees to better be able to focus, to perform, and they feel their best when they're able to recharge, to reset, to restore, when they have downtime. It improves their uptime. It improves their work. Makes them better able to perform. I also think that one of the core benefits of work life integration is a focus on their employees. I think that a lot of employees note that their employers or their organizations, they don't really care about them. They don't really care about the
mm,
stressors that they're experiencing that makes its way into the work that they're performing for the organization. So work life integration is a way to kind of signal to the employees that you do care about them beyond metrics of productivity and output. You care about them beyond just what they bring to the organization, because you understand that they bring their full self every time they show up in the to the organization. And it's just a way of just signaling that you're putting people first, the your employees are the core of your organization. They are what
Mm,
allows your organization to thrive. They're what allows your organization to profit. They're what allows your organization to sustain itself through all of what life brings. So I think just understanding that it is a way to signal to your employees, to your teams, that they do matter to you. And
yeah.
crime, and another thing that I would say is that it is a great way to respond to company bloat. And what I mean by company bloat is just the prevalence of overloading individuals, especially if organizations are significantly understaffed. So a lot of the way that a lot of the benefits of work life integration show up in the way in which organizations are able to offer these benefits, offer these small changes, so that they don't, so that that their teams and their team members and their community doesn't feel so overloaded by some of the changes, the core changes that are happening in the organization. And finally,
Mm,
a lot of employees are reporting burnout, and that leads to low morale. That leads to underperformance. And so, work life integration is a way to kind of respond to this. So, by providing policies or practices that support the needs of the individual beyond just professional development, thinking about core their core needs for mental health, their core needs
mm,
for gym memberships, for out of office time like happy hours, by investing in
mhm.
meditation apps, by investing in them outside of the work that they do. They're going it's going to rebuff any of the things that within the organizational culture that lead to burnout. So I think that there are vast benefits to work life integration that the employers can find, that organizations can find. And I think that it doesn't, a lot of times, it doesn't require you spending excess
Mm,
it doesn't require you spending too much. It just requires you taking the effort to show that you care about your team members, about your community, more than just the work that they put in, that you realize and recognize that they are people at the end of the day, and you treat them with
mm.
this level of dignity and respect and care and compassion that you would and that you should all humanity.
Yeah. Yeah, that really clicks for me. That showing care for the employees as a person, as a real person outside of work. It really reminded me of like that this work and life, it's like a give and take between the employer and the employee. And if you give them the care, then they're much more likely to have higher morale and be able to give back to your company. So yeah, that definitely made a lot of sense. That was a really great explanation. So, on the employees side, then, going into some practices and habits that they might be able to use in their lives, what habits would you recommend practicing to achieve this work life integration arrangement?
Yes. So I think that a lot of times when I'm working a client or talking to an employee around creating a work life integration policy, or creating more opportunities to have work life integration, um, a lot of a lot of it is connected to deeper issues around a lack of self-worth or an understanding of their intrinsic value outside of work. So they think and they believe that their work defines them. It provides them values, and so it's hard and difficult for them to cut back on working, um, because they see it as so integrated into their own sense of self. So a lot of the things that I would suggest to kind of practice is just ideas around valuing yourself, around identifying what is drawing you to a particular career. And I think that those types of things would really help to encourage individuals to develop a work life integration. Another thing that I would suggest is around time and productivity. So the a lot of what we're talking about when we're talking about a work life integration is around time management. So how do
Mm,
we create more opportunities or more space for us to clearly understand what are our work hours and what are our personal what qualifies as personal time, so that we can create healthier boundaries. So a lot of it is just understanding how you're spending your time, making sure that you're taking account and assessing whether or not this is a good use of your time or bad use of your time, or is just depletes your energy without being restorative. Some of those other things are about creating healthier boundaries. A lot of people, they still one of the things that I often advise individuals that are looking to begin practices of work life integration is to delete their work app from their phones. So just
mm,
creating those types of boundaries around, work, oftentimes goes a long way to creating an opening space for you to do non-work things and for you to connect or reconnect, oftentimes reconnect with your sense of self. And the last thing that I would say is about how we develop this kind of consciousness around that leads to and fosters work life integration is to want to do it. A lot of people, they don't know that there's an alternative to their schedule, to how they work. And so I think that just recognizing the need and the value of adopting a more integrated view goes a long way in creating and achieving work life integration.
definitely. Definitely agree with the things you're saying there. And I want to mention it a little bit more in our conclusion. But for now, I think we need to move on to our open mic segment. So, this is where you can share anything with our audience that you're passionate about. It doesn't even have to be related to the topic. So, the floor is yours.
Okay, I thank you. Thank you again. I'm so happy and pleased to be here and to share with your audience about the worth ethic revolution. So, this
Mm,
worth ethic revolution is a movement that is aimed at challenging societal norms that equate self worth with hard work and constant productivity. The worth ethic revolution advocates for a shift in perspective, encouraging individuals to prioritize their well being and live in alignment with their values. And by embracing this revolution, we can break free from the hustle culture and redefine success on our terms, fostering a more balanced, fulfilling, and compassionate approach to life. I am on a mission to help 1,000 professionals this year to redefine their relationship with work, to rediscover their intrinsic value, and to start their worth ethic journey. And I'm inviting you, your audience, to join me on this worth ethic revolution. For example, and there are a number of ways for you to join this worth ethic revolution. The first is by taking the worth ethic boot camp. So I created a 5-day online self-paced boot camp to help you get started on this journey. And you can learn more and sign up on my website, drronkeA.com. And each of the 5 days of this boot camp is focused on a different theme. The first day is about over managing your why. Day 2 is about identifying limiting beliefs around work. Day 3 is about productivity and increasing your time management and creating room for yourself. Day 4 is about redefining success on your terms. And day five is where we create your worth ethic boot camp. So come and join us for this boot camp. A lot of people who
mm,
take the worth ethic boot camp really struggle with time management, specifically
mhm.
with finding space on their busy work and life calendars. So I created a worth alignment time. Let me do that again. I'm
That's
getting
okay.
tired. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. A lot of people who take the Worth Ethic Bootcamp really struggle with time management, specifically with
Mm,
finding space on their busy work and life calendars. So I created a Worth Alignment time optimization service where we'll review your calendar, restructure your work and personal schedule, and free up time for what truly matters. If you're not
mm.
ready to commit to 5 days of this Worth Ethic Bootcamp, I'm hosting an online workshop on creating your worth ethic blueprint, where I will overview the worth ethic framework and help you launch your worth ethic journey. Finally, I would love, love, love to bring the worth ethic leader, a worth centered Finally, I would love to bring the Worth Center Leader program to your organization. So please go on my website and schedule a consultation today to learn how we can fully curate an experience that will create high impact, long term leadership growth for you and your team. I thank you for this opportunity, and I am happy that you have decided to join the Worth Ethic Revolution.
Wow. Yeah, that is such an amazing look into what your work is and what you've been doing. So, can you just tell us that website again?
Yes, it is drronkeaoke.com.
Okay.
DRRONKEOKE.com.
Amazing. And are there any other places where people could go to find you and find your work?
Yes, you can also follow me on Instagram at Dr. Rònké A. So
Hmm.
I'm Dr. Rònké A on Instagram and on TikTok, but primarily you can connect with me through my website or on Instagram.
Yeah, amazing. I wanted to go more into the time management, which you mentioned in your boot camp as well. So definitely suggest to the audience to check that out, and also the boundary setting. But unfortunately, we don't have too much time for that today, mostly because you gave such fantastic answers to everything else. It was so thorough. So thank you so much for coming along today. We have really enjoyed listening to what you've had to say to us. And I hope that everybody will go and find out more about the worth ethic revolution that you mentioned. So if our listeners want to find out more about you, we've got all your links. We'll put them in our show notes as well. So thank you so much again for joining us. It's been amazing to have you here. Thank you also to our audience for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
You have been listening to Sero Boost, the Happiness Science Insights podcast produced by the Happiness Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website, ha.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Lungo. Thanks for tuning in.